Hello. Welcome to today's workshop where we're exploring what it's like to be in the cocoon and how that relates to our journey of creativity and mental health. My name is Erin Byron. We're here every Wednesday from 12:30 to 1:30 Eastern. The link is in the description below. You're welcome to join anytime for mental health through yoga and expressive arts. So, right now, we're following our way through the book Yoga for the Creative Soul. And today's activity takes place via the reflections on page 135 and a little bit into 136. The cocoon is where at the place in Yoga for the Creative Soul that's talking about the 5 paths yoga offers us to come into harmony with who we truly are: self-realization, enlightenment, insight, and awakening. And the path that we're studying today is spoken of in the Bhagavad Gita and many of the traditional writings of yoga: the Gyan path, the path of wisdom, insight, science, study. And the metaphor that we're using throughout this chapter 9 of Yoga for the Creative Soul, is the metaphor of the butterfly, studying ourselves like scientists, thinking like biologists, and comparing that journey of the butterfly, egg, caterpillar, pupa, butterfly, to our own creative journey. We're gathering today on the traditional lands of the Huron and Anishnawbe, among other peoples recorded and unrecorded, and take to heart our responsibility to carry the tradition of giving care to, of taking care of these lands, airs, and waterways. The tradition of yoga is a 5,000-year-old tradition that predates the written word, originally an oral tradition for those seeking communion with ultimate reality, with spirit. And these practices, this wisdom arose in India millennia ago. And here we are, as these ancient truths harmonize with modern science, modern lifestyle, modern practice. We're applying the wisdom of yoga to our personal growth journeys and our mental health. So before we get going with any of the practices today, the breathing, the visualization, we'll start with an expressive arts activity. Just in some way depict the cocoon. And you can do this metaphorically. You can dance or write a descriptive paragraph, create song or sound, or maybe just draw an oval on your sheet of paper, and then within that oval, draw what it's like inside the cocoon and outside the cocoon. That's just a suggestion. Anytime we're doing these expressive activities, you are encouraged to make the depiction your own, to find your way of depicting, expressing whatever it is that may be inside of you. Or we're not always in touch with that. That's actually one of the benefits of expressive arts, is that it lets us express those things that would otherwise remain concealed or unexpressed within us. Things unexpectedly come through us in our expressive endeavors. So before we get really rolling, you are in some way depicting a cocoon. And the fun of this, we will sometimes do journeys like this that have befores and afters. And we will sometimes go on an expressive or transformative journey through these Wednesday workshops. And speaking of science and scientific study, this is one of our scientific methods, is to measure the pre and the post intervention, the pre and the post experience. And in fact, just while you're finishing up this depiction of the cocoon, I'll let you know that when we study yoga therapy in relation to mental health, even after just one class, the pre post change depicts statistical significance that we're scientifically able, for those of you statisticians or people who know how research works, even after just one 60-minute yoga class, there is a difference in people's well-being, their mood, or biological measures of their stress that show us that it is not chance. It is outside the probability of chance. It is not a coincidence that people feel better after a yoga class. And I love the example of how we've studied and we know that people are improved after just one class. But we see this through 8-week interventions, 12-week interventions, 6 months interventions. And the studies are also bringing back the wisdom that more is more. The more we practice, the sooner those benefits come in, and the more sorry about that, the more visible or livable, the more attainable, and the more sustained those outcomes are. More is more in our yoga practice. But okay, there we be. We've depicted the cocoon. Let's do a little bit of a yoga practice now. And we'll start just with awareness. Coming home to our bodies, coming home to our breath. And just letting those inhales and exhales flow. Leaving space at the end of each inhale and exhale. So that the breath has more space and freedom to deepen, to flow. And if you notice yourself carrying some darkness, dis-ease, stress, you're okay to open your mouth and exhale, blowing it away like a winter wind, or letting it go like a sigh. So very consciously on these exhales, we're releasing what does not serve us. And holding awareness inwards, eyes closed or cast down, or seeing everything in the field of vision, but focusing on nothing. So the mind is relaxing. Visual field relaxing, whether eyes are open or closed. And staying connected to the breath, let's physically release some more tension. Just giving ourselves some stretches. Starting by reaching up tall, elongating the spine, the arms, straightening the legs, whether you're in a chair, lying on the floor, or seated on the floor. You can stretch out those legs as well. Yes. And then let the legs come to a comfortable position, arms still in the air. Just start to sway yourself from side to side, swaying from side to side. Yep. That's it. And your breath can guide this movement, or the movement can guide the breath. Side to side. Then the arms come down, wrapping around the torso like a self-hug. One arm to the back, one arm to the front, and twist yourself around, looking out over your back shoulder. If your eyes are open, you can look around with your eyes as well, as if you were trying to see the back of your own head. And then arms up and around and to the other side. Other arm in front. You've switched twitches, the back arm twisting and looking around to the other side, noticing the effect of this revolving action on the breath, as still we're allowing that breath to flow. Smooth and steady and deep. Arms up back to center. Both arms then coming down, wrapping around the front of the body, curving inwards, rounding forward, yes. And then lifting the elbows, lifting the chin, lifting the face, coming into a back bending action, opening the front of the body toward the sky, coming to neutral, settling into the breath once again, and noticing what is different after just those few movements. Is there a change in the depth, quality, speed of the breath? Then let's imagine ourselves held in the life cycle of a butterfly, the caterpillar that's had so many days to munch on the leaves, gain mass, size, strength. Feeling called to spin the pupa, contain itself and rest in the cocoon. And we don't often give thought to the state of the cocoon. My academic advisor in graduate school, a PhD psychologist, Alicia Dunlop, said to me, "What's it like in the cocoon?" And I thought, well, you get to turn into a butterfly. That's probably cool. And she highlighted, it's pretty dark in there and cramped. We used to being able to crawl from leaf to leaf, but now it's cramped. And imagine this in yourself right now. Limited, unseeing, held close, contained, very damp as the caterpillar liquefies. It's wet in there, and it's lonely. In the cocoon, you're becoming an entirely new kind of creature all by yourself. First time ever, never having read the manual for this. And Alicia was talking to me about the experience of the cocoon because she was really teaching me about the process of therapy, being a therapist, having compassion for the transformative journey. As we're doing here in Chapter 9 of Yoga for the Creative Soul, we're meeting science with science, using this metaphor to understand ourselves, our journey and process, by understanding the journey and process of another creature. So the caterpillar goes through this transformative process, even though it didn't fully understand what it was getting into. It was the only way to survive. That's what's next. And likewise, in our own personal, spiritual, creative journeys, that's what's next. It's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. But the process of transition and transformation isn't fun, necessarily. Can be. but it tends to come along with fear of the unknown, with profound loneliness, with a sense of limited options, in the darkness of not knowing what's next. So, thinking of your own transitional journey, come from this visualization, check in with your breath if it became constricted, rapid, shallow in facing the darkness and cramped isolation of that transition. Smooth out your breath again. Let your breath be with you, but depict that kind of cocoon. Echo what you did at the beginning of today's session. If you drew an oval on a piece of paper and depicted what was inside and what was outside the cocoon, perhaps mirror that. So there's some similarity, there's a common thread, but now what's different in your perception of the cocoon? How are you thinking and feeling about this transformation now that we've contemplated it with this deeper sense of compassion for the discomfort and the fear that might be present on this journey? And as you depict this experience of the cocoon, the nature of being in a cocoon once again, remain connected to the thoughts and feelings that are flowing through your awareness. Observe your breath and your inner state. Not censoring, not editing, allowing what is present to come through, allowing yourself to follow those creative impulses and urges, even if they don't fully make sense. And as always, accepting what comes out of you. This journey of self-expression, of personal growth and mental health through expressive arts, is not about the end product. We're not trying to produce a piece of art for a gallery, for a show to hang on the wall, although you might choose any of those routes. Of course, you're welcome to do that. The intention of expressing in this capacity is to allow what is within to come through in its own way. It's to move beyond verbal blocks and receive deeper, more profound or creative expressions from the inner world. Putting the inside on the outside and processing it. There are many things that live unprocessed within us, and these unprocessed emotions, experiences, beliefs, fears pile up, grow together, and can become more serious mental health issues. Or holding them within, not consciously, not because we're trying to hold these things in, but that's just sort of the way our lives tend to be set up. That if it's not creating mental health concerns within us, then it is limiting our recovery from whatever depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress we may be living with. So just the act of expression, a little bit of journaling, drawing, dancing, singing every day can go a long way in helping the brain and nervous system process those things that are interfering with our mental health, help let go of the things that may be holding us back. So even as you are depicting transformation, you are also transforming. We don't judge what comes out of us. Now, the butterfly doesn't know that it's becoming a butterfly. It is trapped in the phase of metamorphosis with no real idea of what's to come. It's about to turn into a free and beautiful creature, but That's not the experience within the cocoon. Growth is painful. Transformation is challenging. Even welcome transformation, even things we've said yes to or trying really hard at, we eventually come to a point in those journeys typically where it's tough to get through, it's tough to keep going, it's tough to finish. And that's where we have the option to persist. Once in the pupa, that caterpillar is not making a conscious choice to become a butterfly. The analogy falls apart there, doesn't it? Where we, to varying degrees, have a choice about how we persist in our creative journeys and our personal growth journeys. Some days it's more accessible than other days. That's kind of outside of our control. But if we set ourselves up with a healthy lifestyle, with support, with simple, achievable goals, then the framework helps us continue on the journey. Now, it can be tough to carry through. It can be tough to keep going to therapy on a regular basis, tough to keep writing out the story of our pain, tough to persist in creating human connections when humans let us down sometimes. And yet it is these acts of courage, the consistency in life to support our mental health that brings us mental health. Sometimes more challenging than other times. Sometimes works out better than other times, but the persistence is what is important. The commitment to holding that intention and taking action to whatever our capacity is that day. And hopefully, perhaps it's helpful to remember the experience of that caterpillar in the cocoon, that when we're in the throes of the discomfort of recovery, of building our mental health, quality relationships, lifestyle practices, it's really hard. It can be really hard. And to remember that the persistence is what takes us through those lonely, dark, confusing, painful times. Really important to get support because, again, unlike the caterpillar alone in the cocoon, we are not alone in this world. There are people who care about us. And if we can't think of a single person who cares about us, there are agencies, there are crisis lines who truly and genuinely care about us, even though they don't know who we are, don't know our names, haven't met us personally. People care. And if you don't believe that that's true for you, nobody cares about me, a crisis line worker doesn't care about me, then think about the times that you've wanted to assist a stranger, somebody whose arms were overburdened with groceries, or a little kid that you saw crying on the sidewalk with a skinned knee. That is our human call, and that humanity connects us, that heart of shared experience, of compassion, always connects us. We're not alone in this cocoon of transformation. We are connected. And what yoga teaches us is that there is a universal thought field. The material reality takes subatomic particles and turns them into things, noses and filing cabinets and fir trees. But under an electron microscope, it's all the same stuff. And that's some of where yoga is talking about. In this other view of reality, we are the same. We are sharing a thought field. Other psychologists like Jung speak of similar approaches to understanding our consciousness and reality. So, what can you do in a third depiction to bring along the ideas of the first two cocoons that you drew, but now depict that in the context of transformation? So, in some way, and this is yours, all yours, to depict however you want, in some way, depict transformational victory, making it through that liquefaction and into something more formed on the other side. Depict how this is done in support or community. Depict the resources that you know you have within you to draw upon. So we're continuing to work with the idea of transformation. This time, we're acknowledging our humanity, our resources, skills, connections, our intentions, lessons, victories, strengths. And we have framed this today in terms of the personal growth journey, in terms of persisting as we're bolstering our mental health. But this metaphor works also on that creative journey. That, as we've spoken of in recent weeks, when we begin a creative project, we feel almost a necessity to follow that inspiration. Gotta get this thing started. This is such a great idea. I'm so excited to bring this to life. And the idea is the egg, and the initial actions are the caterpillar. But is it inevitably? It seems inevitable for me. Maybe it's not for you. Inevitably, I hit a point in the creative journey where it's like being in the cocoon again. I don't know where this is going. It's already not going where I started from. It's turning into this other thing. And I'm stuck, or I'm sick of it. And it's true that because it's our creative endeavor, we oftentimes can choose just to set it aside. But I know many of you watching are artists of some kind by profession. Not so easy to walk away from your creations if you have a show coming up in 4 weeks, or if your editor is waiting for your next draft of your book. We must persist. But even if it's just for your own fun and enjoyment, just weave in the ends of those hats. Just snip off the hems, the threads hanging from the hems of the pants you just sewed, or run that poem through final edits. Finish the tune of the bridge of your song. That when we press for completion, even though it feels dark and lonely and uncomfortable and painful, to have made it all the way through to the other side brings us something special, not just in terms of the creative project, but in terms of our own fortitude, belief in ourselves, understanding of what we're capable of. So, similar to personal transformation, the creative act will hit those places that feel insurmountable, and yet gentle persistence, faith in the process, eye on the prize, the finish line, can get us there. When we get in the habit of not finishing things that started out as important to us, we lose faith in ourselves over time. You only do it a few times. That's, sometimes we have to use our discretion and our discernment, don't we? Sometimes it is better to turn away from something. But oftentimes, we learn more about ourselves and our lives, gain more by pushing through to the end. And a trick that I know gets in the way for a lot of you that I've spoken to as well is the ideal vision of the finished product. So perfectionism, as we've spoken of in months gone by, perfectionism is the enemy. Only excellence. And you can check out the Karma Yoga videos from chapter 7 where where we talk about that, the value of excellence rather than perfection. Chapter 6. Yeah, chapter 6. So, not perfect, but done. And here in these depictions, you've depicted a cocoon. And then we thought about, hey, maybe it's kind of yucky in the cocoon, and you've depicted that. And we talked about that in relation to a mental health journey. And now you have made your most recent depiction thinking of that mental health journey. And likewise, I was talking about it in terms of creative projects. So maybe that seeped into this, this imaging as well. One final depiction for today. And we'll go back to that template if you've been using it of drawing the oval and what's within and without. But this time there within the cocoon, depict just 3 minutes before the butterfly starts making its way out. So whatever needed to happen inside that chrysalis has happened. Completion has arrived on the inside. And however you're depicting it, singing it, writing it, meditating on it this time, be sure to infuse it with that sense of victory, of an internal battle met, hard won. Depict the beauty and the joy of coming all the way through a process. And somehow in this expression, you might also show some of the tools or resources, whether you write their names or draw them, or whether you choose colors and movement on the page to depict those. It can be as symbolic or as literal as you wish. But this final expressive journey today is showing us what it's like when the metamorphosis is complete. Continue every so often to check in with your breath, the thoughts and feelings, the body sense, the urges and the wants. When we gather for these workshops on Wednesdays, we always start with a little sharing off camera. There's a lot of enthusiasm, insight, and support in the group, things that you don't see because they're private to whatever degree people choose to share. That's their choice to share with the people who are here. And time permitting, when we finish, there's also sharing. But it helps us, doesn't it, to see what are other people coming up with? How are they perceiving the lessons, the instructions at these workshops? And you can go to the Yoga for the Creative Soul group on Facebook, where people are posting their expressions, depictions, ideas. You yourself are welcome, even if you weren't here live, to let us know, what do you see? How did you express your ideas, your process? Now, before we wrap up for today, I'll turn it over to those who are here live. If anybody wants to share their depictions, support our journeys by letting us know about yours, the floor is open. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Erin. I'll jump in. Oops, just one. Here we go. So, okay, so when I was thinking about the cocoon, just, before we started any movement, I just drew this little guy up here, kind of isolated, and he's far removed from his true self. And but then after we did the movement, I realized that even though he's in, or she is in the cocoon, there's the touch of the plants surrounding and the air and the sun. So the cocoon is permeable. It's not, solid. And when I thought about support and community and transformational victory, I depicted this, and I was thinking about Florange and her violin, and I got the idea of like these the music staff, and how all of these different feelings of moving towards victory become harmonious and integrated. And then and then the final part about when the metamorphosis is complete is becoming whole and totally integrated with, not just within myself, but with others, getting back into society, not being isolated again.
Wow. Thank you, Karen. And great point about how the caterpillar's not alone in the cocoon, actually, that nature is always there for us. And I know in my work with trauma survivors, where interpersonally we're so disrupted because so often it's humans who've betrayed us and created trauma in the first place, that the nature is so important, that nature is a refuge for so many of us, and that nature herself is sentient, right? That when the gust of wind blows, or when the clouds part, just when the dolphins leap in the ocean, are the timeliest moments. So it is true in the cocoon as well. And I appreciate that insight. Thank you, Karen. Oh, you're muted.
I think that burst of insight came from the photo of George's butterfly and the milkweed. So it wasn't a lone thought. It was came from the community.
Yeah, oh man, healing and creativity and the juice of life is so collaborative. Thank you. So thanks to everyone who came here live. Thanks to everyone who's watching the video. Reach out to me anytime. If you don't want to share it publicly, email me, text me, find me on social media, and reach out that way with any of your questions or to share your creative expressions. We are here every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern, and I look forward to the next time we gather. Thank you so much, everyone.